Well, good evening, this is Hounddog's Tea, wishing you a very pleasant evening. And first, let me apologise for my absence from my broadcast here, but I've had a few personal issues to deal with. I had a break-in at my house, which of course is always very inconvenient. So basically I've been dealing with police, insurance, getting quotes on the back door, which was basically torn off its hinges almost, and so that's been quite time consuming. And of course closing the barn door after the horse has gone, I have installed security cameras now, so that I can see front, side and back of the house. Yes, that was kind of distressing. It was a bit of an unfortunate situation there, but also it's year end for me, and my bookwork had to be done for taxation. And of course I've been watching the unfolding outbreak of CV as it rolls around the world. And this is basically a staggering situation in a space of 2 short weeks. You know, we've gone from basically, well, what is this? It's just a flu, to, oh my God, let's lock the whole country down. And so Italy is in complete lockdown, the entire country. I understand Denmark is now in lockdown. A significant portion of China is still in lockdown. And of course in North America they are considering a 2-week, a 14-day national lockdown in the US. Now, one of the big issues in China, of course, is the whole manufacturing thing. And you see what happened. This sort of is like a compounding situation, because as the Chinese New Year approached, there was a mass migration of about 200 million workers to their home provinces, to the land of their ancestors. And so the outbreak happened whilst they were away, and now they are unwilling to come back to cross the country to go back to work, just because, you know, when you're in a city, of course, there's much more chance that you're going to become infected. There's a chance that you're going to have to go to some kind of camp for quarantine, and of course many people do not return from these quarantine camps. So of course these workers now are scared to death, and they're just basically staying close to home and riding this out. Okay, so 200 million people is an awful lot of people who cannot go to work now. And the other thing, of course, is supply chain issues. And a story which I heard the other day is that a bicycle factory manager had been forced to open the factory 3 times now, and each time they get things ready to run, and they have no cotter pins to put the pedals onto the bicycle, and so they can't move forward until they get cotter pins, and so they mill around for a couple of hours and then head on home. So this is going to present real issues. Now, I've been hearing all kinds of scuttlebutt out there, that this was the big globalist plan, and now they may indeed, and I'm sure they have, planned for maybe this kind of an outbreak. And of course the technocrats and the governments are using this opportunity, never let a good crisis go to waste, to push forward all kinds of draconian measures. So this is in essence a forced medical house detention. And who knows how long we are going to be here. We could even see forced or mandated vaccinations, and we could also see the army, the National Guard or the RCMP rolled out to enforce quarantines in towns and villages. And of course we are seeing increasing control of the internet in an effort to control the narrative. And you even mention anything of this outbreak, and you are immediately demonetized. There is a label put under your video sending you to the WHO for the official information. And of course, if you've been following Chris Martenson, he has basically been calling out the ridiculous information coming out of WHO and the governments around the world, which I personally believe will lead to the demise of those governments. Because I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, this outbreak is going to expose every weakness, every crack. And I believe the credibility of governments, corporations and media is just going to collapse as people are forced to survive on their own wits, on their own ability to make ends meet. And you're going to find community is going to suddenly burst forth. You are going to see localization of as much as possible. And I think there are actually so many upsides to what is coming down the track. As we really, as we learn that we really don't need all of the things that government has taken over. And as I say, government will be forced into a different position, or it will just become obsolete because it will not work and does not work in this kind of situation where there are too many unknowns. Government has become unwieldy, inflexible, totally top-heavy, driven by bureaucracy, and of course this is the reason that all governments do in the end collapse, because they become moribund in their own stagnation and corruption. And ladies and gentlemen, we are most certainly at that point. Whether this was a created virus, when I do believe it's a created virus, just because of some of the research I've been doing, and I will link my video with that research down below here. But when we look at the way the globalists or the technocrats behave, they like things orderly. They plot and they plan, but they are very precise. When you look at the things that George Soros does, for example, he'll set up NGOs in countries so that he can have representatives and control over those representatives in the EU. So all of this stuff, same with bureaucrats. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed. And so I don't think that they really want total chaos. Now, I won't deny that a lot of the things that we're seeing, this forced quarantine for, en masse for the whole nation, I can see closing down the borders and stopping of international travel. But no, the thing that concerns me is the amount of people that will be affected by this. For example, the airline industry, the travel industry, has basically come to a grinding halt. Restaurant reservations have fallen off a cliff and layoffs have started. And of course, a friend of mine once said there's only one thing worse than a bad deal, and that's a bad deal on borrowed money. And this situation that we're in right now, well, it would be difficult to get through it. Regardless of what you feel about the virus, regardless of where you think it came from, regardless of whether you think this was a planned event or not, as I say, when you look at the Baltic Dry Index and other indicators around the world, the oil, for example, oil price falling off a cliff, these are real things that have a real effect. In fact, the drop in oil price is going to affect fracking in the US. Fracking needs, I believe, $30 a barrel to break even, and to drop it down below $30 a barrel is going to start shutting down the fracking industry in the US. And of course, that was one of their big, jewels in the crown, was to be energy self-sufficient. But again, the knock-on from that is all the people who work at these fracking plants and drilling sites are all going to be laid off. So who's going to pay those bills? Where is that money going to come from? And we live in a world today where there is no forgiveness, where the algorithm rules, and all of a sudden you have a situation that you can no longer control because your paycheck was directly deposited into your account, and you had all kinds of direct debits for services, bills, and so on and so forth. Now, my situation here is we could easily see a 2-week quarantine, and if it extends beyond that, certainly financially speaking, what my advice would be, and now I'm not a financial advisor, but I have unfortunately been in this situation before, and the key is to not stop paying. For your credit cards, for example, even if you send your credit cards $5 a month and a letter saying that you are making an attempt to pay, they cannot take you to court. Your property taxes, make an effort, pay something, pay $5 a month, whatever it is that you can, But you have to pay something, because if you don't, that's when the trouble begins. That's when they start foreclosing on your home and sending it to court and so on and so forth, into collection. But as long as you're making an effort, and if it ends up in court, you have an opportunity to basically speak up for yourself and say, listen, I was making an effort to pay my bills. I couldn't do any more than that. We are in an unprecedented situation right now. And with the outcomes will be unprecedented. I actually don't believe personally that we will pull back from this. I think it's going to take years, because I think that this is going to start a cascading series of events that we cannot undo. Okay, as I say, there is no forgiveness in the banking system, and these algorithms will start NSFing you, charging you on your account, exacerbating the situation, and the banks want their pound of flesh. It's as simple as that. So they cannot stand this kind of a shock. And what about all the businesses? If you're not making money, you are not shopping, you're not buying, or you're buying essentials. You're really taking very, very good care of your cash flow, and it is only going on absolute essentials, because nothing else will be justified. And this is what's coming, folks, and that's why I don't think that there will be any undoing this. Like I say, things in our society are so intricate, so interwoven, so interdependent, that once the dominoes start to fall, it will be impossible to stop them from falling. And so I would prepare yourself accordingly. I would prepare yourself for a couple of weeks at home. Now I'm going to link a video below. This is the interview with Clif and Bix Weir, and the defense against this. You can call Clif crazy, but I've been following Clif for an awful long time now, over a decade, and I think he's absolutely brilliant. I've listened to almost everything he's had to say, and I trust his word, I trust in his wisdom, and I really think that he is as smart as he claims to be. Just the ability that he has to join all of the dots together. Okay, so what you need to do, apparently he's taken this virus apart, or spoken to scientists who work with this virus, and the defense against this virus is vitamin C, and we're talking 22 milligrams per kilogram. Vitamin D, 10,000 IUs, this is per day, and drinking chaga tea. Now chaga is a fungus that grows on silver birch. Now luckily where I live in Ontario, which is in Canada, there is a ready supply of chaga, and this is what it looks like. This is the last chaga that I harvested. This is where it's on the side of the tree, and it is like a piece of wood. It's quite dense, and now I would smash this up with a hammer and break it into small crumbles about the size of, what would I say, about a pea, about the size of a pea. And then you soak this in water, bring it to the boil, and there is your chaga tea. And this is an antiviral. It's the most unbelievable antiviral fungus that you can find in nature. Okay, so the combination of those three things, vitamin C, vitamin D and chaga tea, will help you to resist. It will give you a defense against this virus. Now of course I got to do a little disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I have no qualifications in this area. I am simply passing on information that Clif gave to me. As I say, the video is linked below, and I would recommend that all of you watch that video, because it is extremely informative, and it will give you an idea of what is happening moving forward. So we need to become resilient. You need to learn how to plant a garden, to take care of yourself a little bit. I mean, frankly, at this point in time, if you can immunize yourself with vitamins, and you know, the great thing about this, these three things, it's so unbelievably cheap. This is so inexpensive. to do this, why not? It can't do any harm, and if Clif is right that this is the key to the defense, to building up your body to be ready for this virus, well, why not? Now, just one final little point. I am really disappointed in the way the media has handled this. You know, it started out where they weren't reporting it at all. Then they started playing it down, that it is just the flu, blah, 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 no big deal, nothing to see here. And then all of a sudden, you know, in the space of about a week, it went from that to full-blown panic. And I looked at the paper the other day, and literally the first 10 or 15 pages of that newspaper were all some aspect of this outbreak. And so they whipped up all this kind of hysteria in the public, and now they're telling the public not to be hysterical and to hoard stuff and what have you. But, you know, all of a sudden it seems apparent that we are going to have to survive for 2 weeks at least in our own homes. And so, you know, if you want to buy 2 weeks worth of groceries, it's going to look like you're hoarding. And so I think it's very, very unfair of the media, who whipped up this frenzy, who are now maligning the public because they were scared by the frenzy whipped up by the media. And also China for underreporting this when it first happened. You know, this has been ongoing since December the 3rd. The Chinese did nothing about this. The Chinese, not Chinese people, the Chinese government did nothing about this until the 22nd of January. Okay, that is a full 6 weeks, of doing absolutely nothing and allowing this to get a foothold, and then allowing people to leave the country, to travel around the world. So this is absolutely, you know, they're all, you know, all of the countries now, I shouldn't say all of them, but the worst hit countries now are calling this a bioweapon. Okay, Italy is calling it a bioweapon. Britain is calling it a bioweapon that the Chinese started. The Iranians are blaming anybody. The Russians are blaming the Americans, and the Chinese are blaming the Americans. And of course the Americans are blaming the Chinese. So it is coming to the surface that this is a bioweapon, and it was created. And Clif made a wonderful point that there are no novel coronaviruses. Okay, there is only coronavirus, and this is ancient. It's been around for, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and it's just mutated with its own form. Ebola, these viruses are ancient, and so there is no novel coronavirus unless it's been created by a human being. And so I think the full story will eventually come out. Again, as Clif said, it takes you know, a couple of months into the outbreak to realize that you're not dealing with a normal flu, that you are in fact dealing with a bioweapon. And so we are going to find out. By the time we get to the middle or the end of April, we are going to know what kind of future we are looking at. And right now, I think we better all be prepared for some radical changes in lifestyle and the way we conduct business, and the way we you know, get along with our relatives, family and neighbours. And I would urge everybody to be kind, to be patient, to accept the faults of others, to not be angry or be driven by fear. Be driven by logic. Make common sense. You know, if you have to sit down at the dining room table with your family and with a piece of paper and make some common sense decisions as to how we should go forward, certainly initially, because, you know, this is what we're looking at in the near term, and that is what we're all going to have to deal with. So please like, comment and share this video if you've enjoyed it. Of course, YouTube is basically, you know, shutting down all and every video it can, demonetizing and this kind of stuff. I don't know who gave them the right to be the arbiter of the voice of the people, especially when, you know, the media itself are doing such a god-awful job of letting us know exactly what is happening. Okay, well, I hope you did enjoy this video, and in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.